Hey, Philip, welcome to the show.
Hey Jordan, good to see you, man. Great to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me.
So we were just talking a little bit off air. Cannabis, man, the industry. Talk to me a little bit about. I don't want to say the mess, but the hurdles that the industry faces, and give me a little bit of context on where it's at. Because outside looking in, it looks like the wild, wild west right now.
Well, that that's a good analogy. And how long do we have? Because I can talk about it, for hours. There are many layers of the complexity, but I think that the common denominator is the fact that the industry is not federally regulated, so it's not federally legal. And that by itself implies that there are so many regulations on a state level. So as many regulated states, as many problems out there. To put it very concretely, the industry is overregulated but under supervised. And that comes with a lot of hurdles, obstacles. I would say that one of the worst thing that is happening out there is that people are interpreting these regulations, as they come and go. And that is very, very hard to sort of supervise. As I said, there are many layers in that. We try to sort of help solve for most of these problems across the country in all the states. So we're currently focused, in California because that's the biggest market currently in the country. But we are spreading our wings and going in other markets as well.
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot to unpack. I mean, you've worked in for major brands, right? You've spent time. You were at Anheuser-Busch, alcohol, which faces not hurdles, but not as nearly as many as cannabis when it comes to things like advertising. We're at this interesting point. We're almost able to define the consumer relationship with cannabis at scale and how it is perceived. How or where do you see the responsibility of Lucid Green in helping with that consumer education, empowerment, and overall acceptance, I would say, of cannabis?
Yeah, let me just for a step go back to the thing you mentioned, the overlap between the CPG world, specifically alcohol and cannabis, because there are similarities, right? I mean, here in the US, alcohol was prohibited, right? So cannabis was prohibited for many, many years, and alcohol, went to be legal, and this is what's happening in cannabis now. So there are some similarities there. And me coming from the beer industry, I can take a lot of that knowledge and experience and apply it to cannabis. And this is the context to your question, because one of the key ingredients there is consumer education. So one of the mistakes that the beer business specifically has made in the US is not providing enough education to consumers. Compared especially to Europe, a lot of countries in Europe where beer is not just a commodity, it's much more than that. So instead of just asking for beer in Europe, you would ask for different styles, different flavors, different extracts and stuff like that. This is not the case in the US, and I think that that diminishes the potential of the industry as a whole. So I think that given that the cannabis industry is in a way in its introductory stage, there is a great opportunity for us, for all of us, to overcome that. So not to repeat that same mistake that happened in alcohol. So that's why, as I said, as Lucid Green, we also touch upon the consumer angle, and we offer this DTC platform, which we call Lucid Connect, which serves primarily to inform and educate consumers about responsible consumption, about different occasions, and also whatever the brands deem appropriate, to tell as a story in order to convince their consumers that they are the best choice out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's a battle to not only empower the consumer, but then to also fight against the stigma that has been out
Oh yeah,
around cannabis. And like you said, it's not federally illegal, right? There are still people being put in prison for this. So when we look at
sadly,
that, it creates a tension immediately where it's a crime in one place, then you drive 200 miles,
yeah.
you can start a business in another. So I feel like that dichotomy there just is a natural breeding ground for tension, just with people and misunderstanding. A lot of information to be out there and political campaigns one way or the other. With all that, do you work, you have the consumer facing side, but are you working with these cannabis brands as well in any joint efforts to go like, okay, hey, we got to do this event, or we got to like helping power any of their efforts out in the community?
That's a great question, and thank you for the context because indeed the industry has been very much stigmatized, and this has been done for decades. And as we know, particular demographics have been the biggest victims of this. So that's on top of it. So to destigmatize takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and we recognize that. So one of our missions is to try and contribute in this approach. So, we have a lot of extracurricular activities, I would say, to try and contribute in this aspect. So we consider ourselves as trusted advisor or thought leader. We do a lot of blogs. We do a lot of events. We participate across different panels. But also, I would say we hired a lot of professionals coming from the industry itself, so we can better understand the folklore, the tradition, the styles, and everything that has to do with the culture of cannabis in order for us, to represent ourselves better. So it's about congruence, and I think that we're doing a very good job so far. But it's responsibility of everybody, I think, because this is an industry that's not like any other, right? So it comes. I wouldn't say it starts from scratch. It starts from negative, so we need to come to the surface and start evolving, and that's a lot of effort, as I said, that comes as a symbiosis of everybody involved.
Do you think, coming from Europe and seeing how the acceptance, the stigma of alcohol, for instance, is very different. I lived in Germany. It's very different. It's, there's, it's not as, let's just get as messed up as possible all the time, type of thing. Where, don't get me wrong, people do that, but not to the same level or the same push that you see in the US. Do you feel like living there, moving to the US, has that global, I guess, outlook has helped you bring some new perspectives maybe into Lucid Green or into other organizations you worked with?
Absolutely. And also, what really helped me is that while I was in Europe, and this was in the period when I was with Molson Coors, I was overseeing 11 countries as part of my role. So I had to, I had the privilege actually to travel across these countries very frequently and learn about the cultural differences, the different occasions. To your point of how alcohol is being consumed and what alcohol represents, etc., etc. So I think that the key word there is occasions, and marketers, they really need to understand the occasions of consumptions in order for them, to produce the best communication out there, to position their product or their brand, in the most meaningful way. And this is what's happening in cannabis now. So through our platform, we're trying to help newcomers and already existing brands, to understand the importance of consumption occasions, because again, going back to the stigma, a lot of people would think about cannabis as rolling a joint, getting high, but that's just a small portion that will still be part of the culture and will always be relevant. But there's a plethora of different occasions, there are a plethora of different product types, and that's what makes the industry so beautiful. The potential is vast, but we need to understand those occasions, even create new occasions for people to enjoy, to find their own spot, because again, cannabis is not to be regulated for the current users, consume it freely, but for new users potentially, to step into the category. People who have the stigma, they need to break the stigma and join the wagon, and that's the only way for the industry to survive. If I'm being honest, it's for new people to step in and start consuming and understand, first of all, the benefits of this plan, because there are plenty. So it's a lot of layers, as I said previously, to the complexities. But this is why I'm repeating again: consumer education is super critical.
Yeah, it's like, what can we do to get grandma to have a gummy? And what is like, how do we market that when, I just think about, my grandma and there's no chance, right? She's, trust me, if there's a stigma out there, she's got it when it comes to things,
Mhm.
anything, alcohol, cannabis, you name it. So it's like,
But sorry to interrupt you. Many years ago, I had it, right? Because I was a ex-professional athlete. I was a sportsman. So for me, cannabis, marijuana, that was a no-no. And today, this is, I'm not going to advertise the product, but I have this cream that I apply, for my pains. Like I have joint pains, muscle pains, and this helps. My wife, she has a problem with sleeping. She has insomnia, which is a big problem actually, and it affects her and me. So she takes certain, cannabis products, gummies, and other stuff to help her relax and sleep better. So this is, the angle that I'm talking about that people need to understand, recognize, maybe test, get a sample, try to understand how it would affect them, help them hopefully, and hopefully, go and return back to any other brand.
Yeah, it's I think there's this moment with people where they have to open their eyes and realize that it's not just sober and high are the only two options. There's a million things in between, from pain relief and help with anxiety to in just enjoying a movie a little more, whatever you want to do, right? The same way that there's in anything, there's I can have a very light beer, or I could start having, 140 proof alcohol. Very different effects on my body. Over the counter Tylenol versus Oxycontin, very different effects on my body. And there's a million steps in between in different uses. I think that, yeah, people are coming around. I also think the dollar signs that are going into states are, it's at a point where it's like, it's, you can't ignore it, right? Like when I first moved to the US, I moved to Florida, and you saw a lot of like, it's never going to be legal type of advertising. And then, as I lived there, you saw, okay, medical accepted. And you just start to see more and more.
Have you seen this? It was a meme, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was California, but essentially it was this older dude who just came out of prison. So as he's getting out of prison, across the street, there is a billboard that advertises cannabis brand, and he was in prison for cannabis possession. So he was in shock, that the irony of it. He's getting out of prison for cannabis possession, and then he goes out, and then he sees this billboard advertising the same product. So but it's a good thing that we're evolving in that sense, at least.
Yeah, it's wild times. Now, on the advertising side with you, do you all face the same regulations when it comes to advertising Lucid Green that the actual manufacturers and farms face as well?
Unfortunately, yes. Just yesterday, so we had a video format, advertising of a video format that we wanted to boost on LinkedIn, and we got banned. So the response was, you're talking about cannabis, so that's a keyword that we're not allowing, and we couldn't do the ad, even though, as I said, we are regarded as a tier 2 company. Tier 2 is a company that doesn't touch cannabis products, but we're still involved in the industry, so therefore we face almost the same restrictions, especially when it comes to advertising. So, we do a lot of dark advertising, anything that is allowed within the corridor of marketing. We try to do our best, with everything that's out there through like technology and utilization of our own website, social media, events, SEO. And so far, I would say I'm happy, I'm content because we are able to tell our story, be fair, to the regulations, but also do our best, to your point, to try to influence, because we need to expand this corridor of what's allowed in time, because especially for the brands and retailers, they need to be able to tell their stories more than we do, because consumers need to hear. And as I said, I'm repeating this for the third time, it's all about a consumer.
Yeah, consumers, education. Now, if you look forward 5 years from now, what's your prediction? What's the industry look like?
I dream of the cannabis space being federally legal. I think that everybody does. I would lie if I say that I expect that it will happen in 3 months, in 1 year. There are so many factors, that affect this national state, but I really believe that it's just a matter of time. And as everything in life, it's all about timing. What I expect is that throughout that period until it becomes legal, even afterwards, brands and retailers and distributors and us, the tech companies, that support the industry, will work in tandem. We work together towards the same objective, because it's all about the plant, and then it comes about profits, about segmentation, about scaling and growth, etc., etc. If we lose that north star, that everything is about the plant, we will make a mistake. For the time being, there are companies who understand this, there are companies who do not understand this, and this is why there is a lot of proliferation out there. But I expect that as we go through time in 5 years, that the companies who really trust in the business, in the cannabis industry, and who put effort towards that will be the one who will prevail, because that will be the basis. That's what will set up the next 10 years and the next 20 years. And we need, as I said, relative to the beer business, not to repeat the mistakes that were done before. So staying committed, staying true to the common goal, as I said, trusting in the plant, consumer centricity, and I think that we'll get there eventually.
I love it. I think you're spot on. Philip, before I let you go, let people know where they can learn more about Lucid Green and then also where they can connect with you online.
Right. Thank you. So lucidgreen.io, that's our website. It's our repository. You can get everything about a company on our website, but you can find us on social media as well. So lucidgreen.io on Instagram, lucidgreen on LinkedIn. Filip Luneski is my personal account where I talk about cannabis and other stuff. So if you want to learn about me more privately, you can follow me as well. But I invite everybody to join us on our journey towards enabling the cannabis industry work smarter, and hopefully see the industry thrive in recent time.
Amazing. I'll put links to both of those in the show notes page. Go connect with Philip and check out Lucid Green. Philip, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody. That's it for this episode. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Shelton. I catch you next time.